Cox states, whichever of them got the first supply of that article would, by treating the Indians to a grand smoking match, succeed in getting the produce of their hunt. Cox, riding a horse named Le Bleu, won the race for the Pacific Fur Company. In the camps, trades might be made using bales of trade goods as a counter. Pelts for trade were brought to the company clerk to be evaluated for Maine beaver credits. Having established their value, a mix of trade goods was haggled between clerk and trapper. The standards of trade for 1824 at Spokane House give us the value, in made beaver, for many of the trade goods. Some examples include awls for sewing per dozen, 1 made beaver; gun flints per dozen, 1 made beaver; beads, blue and white, strung per pound, 6 made beaver; knives, butcher and clasp, 1 made beaver; tobacco twist per pound, 2 made beaver; blankets, plain, 3 points, each 6 made beaver; Northwest trade gun, 18 made beaver. A trapper might not expend all his beaver credits at a particular trade. A beaver hunter might also ask for a certain quantity of trade goods on credit against his next season's fur catch. When the trade was made, the trade goods were taken off the counter by the trapper. The clerk took possession of the pelts, and a good deal ended with a handshake. The company, besides trading for beaver and other pelts, also traded for horses and food supplies with the trappers and Indian tribes. All goods were valued in beaver pelt credits. Everyone knew that a stretched, dried, ready for packing pelt equaled 1 made beaver, the coin of the realm. Each fur-bearing animal had a pelt value equivalent in made beaver. Using the 1824 standards of trade for Spokane House as a reference, it took the following number of pelts to equal 1 made beaver in value: 2 small beaver, 1 large land otter, 10 muskrat, 4 mink, or 3 marten. Tanned hides of large game animals also had made beaver credit values. A tanned deer was worth 2 made beaver at Spokane House. Lead was an essential trade item for molding bullets for the trappers' firearms. This commonly came in 1-pound bars, valued at 1 made beaver per bar. Hunters could easily cut up the lead in pieces that were placed in a ladle and melted over a campfire. The molten lead was then poured into a mold, producing a round ball. The lead left in the pouring channel, called the sprue, was then cut off. Typically, between 10 and 20 bullets would be molded at a time. The beaver hunters had to feed themselves and their families by living off the land, and firearms were essential for procuring meat. They were rarely used in self-defense. The beaver trapper's hunting pouch had to carry all the necessary accessories for the loading, cleaning, and field repairs of his firearm. This might include a screwdriver, ball puller, ball patches, bore cleaning material, extra flints, and a supply of lead balls. A smart beaver trapper would also carry extra frizzen and mainsprings. Gunpowder was most often carried in a horn, which quite often came from a bison. Lead shot, when used in the trade guns and fowling pieces, might be put in a leather pouch with a stopper in the end and shoulder carrying strap. The firearms, as well as gunpowder, shot, lead for bullets, and gun flints were trade items, all traded for beaver pelts. Competition between the Northwest Company and the Pacific Fur Company was keen, and clerks from both companies would go into the field to try and beat each other to the trappers bringing in the pelts for trade. In the spring of 1826, the Hudson's Bay Company replaced Spokane House with a new trading post above Kettle Falls on the Columbia River, named Fort Colville. Fort George, formerly Astoria, was also abandoned, and Fort Vancouver was built some 60 miles up the Columbia. The Columbia River now became the fur trade highway from Fort Colville to Fort Vancouver in the Pacific Ocean. Jocko Finley, the first citizen of Spokane House, continued to live at the abandoned post with his Spokane wife, Tishwentachina, and family. He died in 1828 and was rumored to be buried under the southeast bastion of the trading post. Following Finley's death and his family's departure, Spokane House rapidly fell into disrepair. As the land was tilled for agricultural crops, almost all surface traces of the fort were destroyed. All visible signs of the Indian campsites have also been lost. In time, the lower, middle, and upper bands of the Spokanes were removed to their modern-day reservation north and west of the confluence of the two Spokane rivers. The first archaeological dig at the Spokane House site was in 1952 and 53. The objective was primarily to locate fort palisade walls. During this exploration, a grave found beneath the southeast bastion was confirmed to be that of Jocko Finley. A second archaeological dig in 1962 and 63 determined the location of some of the buildings and their uses. In 1976, Jocko's remains were reburied under the bastion with a marker placed by his descendants. Today, the palisade locations for the 1812 Pacific Fur Company post and subsequent expansions by the Northwest and Hudson's Bay Companies are marked by color-coded iron rails. The original 1810 Northwest Company trading post site has not as yet been located. This area has a long and rich history, starting with the Spokane people and other tribes who gathered here to fish and trade. The fur trade brought European contacts with the Indian people and manufactured items such as metal, cloth, and ceramics to barter for beaver and other animal pelts. Today, the Spokane House site lies within Riverside State Park. An interpretive center just south of the trading post displays many of the artifacts from the archaeological digs. A model of Spokane House as it existed in 1823 is also on display. The landscape of open bunchgrass and ponderosa pine forest looks much the way the first white visitors described it when they came to Nimchinsen 2 centuries ago.